how can you feel bad about it? It's all these Filipinos on stage. But let's zoom out.
Yeah.
And look at who put those people on that stage.
Mm.
And whose story are they glamorizing?
Mm.
Of all the stories that we have. Yeah, I understand mass media and yeah, let's get our stories on TV. But it's like, if all white people are writing it, it's really representation. At this point, the way that it's being thrown around equates to white validation.
Well, my friends, Here Lies Love is closing on Broadway this Sunday. And there are a lot of mixed emotions about that. Well, of course, we want a musical that highlights Filipinos on the stage, especially on a stage like Broadway, and that highlights an important part of our history. There have been a lot of really mixed feelings about its production. Is this the story that we want to be telling? Are these the people in our history that we want to be focusing on and portraying in a way that's fun and glossy when so many things that they are said to have done are far from fun and glossy? Because of the review that I did after seeing the musical on opening weekend, I was made aware of an article that came out shortly after that review by a woman named Caro Mangosing. She is the creator, owner, and founder of Vinta Gallery, a fashion boutique based out of Toronto, Canada, and that has been providing the world with not only Filipiniana and Filipino-inspired clothing, but also sharing with the world the history and a perspective of what it means to be Filipino, especially a Filipino that is living outside of the motherland in the diaspora. When I saw the title, Here Lies, a statement about, not a review of, the Broadway musical Here Lies Love, I felt like it was directly speaking to me. And you'll soon find out as you watch this video that in its roundabout way, it was. And so when I had the opportunity to go out to Toronto, Canada, I was like, well, you know what? I think I should reach out and see if she would be willing to have a conversation with me. So what you're about to see is the conversation that her and I had, not only regarding Here Lies Love, but also about what it is that Filipinos can and perhaps should be doing to find a sense of identity that has depth and goes beyond just a glossy portrayal of what the world wants to see of us, but who it is that we actually really are, and how our history and how our collective experiences have shaped who it is that we are today as we dive deep to create a sense of identity for ourselves. It is such a joy to sit down with you, and I really appreciate you, first of all, answering my DM, because you're very clear at the very gate. You're like, I'm just not going to respond if I don't know who you are. And I'm like, well, I'll just throw it out there. I'll see if she's open to meeting, and I'm so grateful. I think the thing that captures me the most about you is that you are like, I'm Filipina. No holds barred. This is what I am. This is who I am. I appreciate that. And I look up to that. And I want to emulate more of that in my life. And so I guess the reason why I'm here is to ask you, like, where all that comes from. I mean, that's sort of like an open-ended, weird question. But like, I feel like there's something inherent in all of us Filipinas that you resonate and really exude the most of that I've ever seen or experienced.
That's really funny. First of all, I responded to you because I saw your Here Lies Love video.
Oh,
because
my gosh.
I was talking about it, and I was in the middle of writing my blog.
Really?
So I saw your post before I wrote my blog. And then I thought, okay, she's being very nice and very kind. And I was like, I'm going to just push it a little bit harder. So that's what I did. When you reached out, I was like, oh, this is the girl. I'm like, I'll talk to her.
Okay, I'm like, okay, first of all, I stopped breathing, and my heart just kind of went, because when I read your article, I was like, she's kind of calling me out. With my series, I tread the line of, I say enough, but not enough to get me in trouble. That's that's kind of like the main thing that's going through my mind as I'm like expressing this. I was like, I don't know how to say this.
I could tell. It was like, she's struggling, and I know what her perspective is probably, but she's trying to be nice. And that's just not me. I'm nice. I'm super nice and generous and all of those kind of things. But I just feel like you know, as a community,
Mm.
we're all just trying to be too nice all the time.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm okay getting into trouble because I've been in trouble my whole life. You
Yeah.
know, like I've always gotten in trouble for my independence and my opinions. And so that comes from somewhere, you're right. And it comes from being a rebel and being misunderstood. And so I just kind of don't give a fuck a little
Yeah.
bit. Like I'm gonna be 50 next year. So I really don't give a fuck anymore.
Yeah.
You know, like
I do know because I'm 44 and I keep telling people I cannot wait to turn 50 because I'm like I feel like that's the moment where I'm just like fuck it all, you know.
yeah.
But it's like why can't we be that way before, right?
Because we're women, we're
Mm,
Filipino women.
mm,
It took a long time. I mean, even
yeah,
though I was rebellious from the gate, like I left
yeah.
home at 18. My dad was abusive, like physically abusive. Like I called the cops on him. So like this is where that comes from.
Got
My
it.
fight comes from that. I like to be transparent about it because
Yeah.
I don't think like abuse in Filipino families is talked about enough. And it comes from patriarchy. And it comes from our colonized mentality. But our societies before the Spanish came were matriarchal.
Yeah.
That's why all the immigrants, it was tita who came first. It was Lola who came first. They were nurses.
Yeah.
So many, particularly here in Toronto, it was women led.
Yeah.
It was like the mothers came first, were sending money back, and then petitioned and sponsored the whole family.
I never thought about that. I think especially because like in the States, it was the early manong were the ones that came out to farm and also the pensionados. It was actually there were a lot of female pensionados that came out to study.
I didn't even know that there were females eventually, I guess, because I know that they weren't allowed to bring women, the first wave of the manongs.
Right.
But then in the 60s, when the nurses came, it was all women.
And it's interesting because it was my mother who like led the charge of the entire family, both on my mother, well, especially on her side, but like my father's side as well. She was like, come on, we're going to the States. And my dad's like, no, I got a really good job, you know, working for the Marcoses. And he's like, I'm going to stay here and hang out and you can go and do your thing, but you know, you got to come back. And my mom was like, no. And then my dad started to see things shift in the administration. And he's like, okay, yeah, you're right. That lineage of my mother and my grandmother who raised me on my mother's side, like it is so strong and so rich. I wonder if that's a part of also, I don't know, this inner, I'll call it this inner rage that I feel. Not personally, but just in general, I feel like there's an inner rage that as a community we feel. And I wonder if a lot of that is not only because of colonization, but also because a lot of the female energy, the feminine energy that was pushed down and this patriarch that we were taught and told needed to be the way of how we live our lives, if that superseded what we inherently already felt and we're creating as a community.
I don't see the older generation trying to fight it so hard. I can't think of anybody right now that really stood up to their husband or, you know what I mean? Everybody was like very kind of obedient.
Yeah.
My mom was very obedient. They're not together anymore, but it was like she played her role.
Yeah.
And I hated it.
Mm.
I did not like it.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't like how he treats you and how you behave, and I just didn't like it right from the start. I remember at one point I was questioning Jesus and God and religion.
Yeah.
Pretty young. And so I started questioning things really young and I would get slapped. It's like, why do you say that? Don't say that about Jesus. And then it's like, huh. And I had no art history background. I had nothing. I was 7 years old, you know? But it was
that
like,
young. Sorry, I was thinking you were like a young teenager at this point.
No.
Wow, you were really young.
I was young, like really questioning things. And it's like, you know what you're doing to me is not fair.
Yeah.
And I always thought that. So it's like, I think throughout my life, it was always about justice. We moved to the States when I was 10. My first friend was Filipino. And the first week I was speaking Tagalog to him and he would respond in English. He understood everything I said. And then eventually he said, you need to stop speaking that now.
Wow.
Because you're in America now. I was fucking humiliated.
Yeah.
And it stayed with me forever until now. I was 10.
Yeah.
And so I stopped speaking Tagalog for the next 15 years. Like 0. I stopped.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I'm just going to blend in. And then I pretended I was Mexican. And, you know, it was like really intense. So then in my 20s and going to college and taking women's studies and learning about all this stuff and reading a lot of, you know, books from the Black Power movement. And I was like, oh, this resistance, this kind of thing. I need to, this resonates with me so much. Learning about oppression at a university level, like learning about women's oppression and then women of color and like the intersectionality of it all, and reading Angela Davis. It gave me the vocabulary for all of the things that I had been feeling my whole life, and it all clicked.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, here are the words.
Yeah.
This is what I've been feeling, but I didn't know. My white friend in high school had a baby at like 22, and she started calling me his nanny because I was his little Filipino nanny. And they all would laugh, and all my friends were white. It made me feel uncomfortable, but I didn't know how to respond. And then I read the right books, and I said, you can't call me that anymore. He's like, is this just a joke? Is this a joke, Caroline? What the hell?
Yeah.
And I'm like, when was the joke going to end?
Wow. That is so powerful.
This kid is like blonde and he's growing up calling me nanny. But it's interesting, like at that time, that was in the 90s.
I think about the very personal experience that you had in a family where you were physically oppressed, and also where you experienced parental figures where one was the oppressor and one was accepting and allowing that to happen. You know, then there's what it is that we're experiencing today as a community as we're trying to find and search for identity and embrace and own our identity as Filipinos. But then I think about the more global idea of colonization and how familiar that all sounds and feels. Like we have an oppressor that comes in and says, you will accept this behavior against you, towards you, that is pushing you down, and you just have to take it. In a way, that's what I felt was happening as I was filming that episode about Here Lies Love. It's like, I feel like something's wrong, but I can't quite articulate it because I don't have the practice and I've never been shown, and I've never been allowed to say that there's something wrong. And so I, in a way, then self-sabotage that anything's wrong. I'm like, oh no, but it's actually okay because it's...
Yeah, which is the journey that Filipinos go through. The kind of thing that we put out there, our talent and our stories. It's like the talent isn't enough. Like it's so basic. We are all talented. We already know this, that we're actually specially talented people as a people.
Yeah.
Right? We know this. We're musical, dance, all that kind of stuff. Creatives, amazing creatives in the community. But it's like, what does it matter when it's like we're all just trying to get white people to pat us on the head?
And you feel that that's what it is still to this day?
Yeah. And also money. Like, how much money are they making?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm only going to get a Forbes feature if my company's making $200 million a year. All these investors are dropping cash, and then it's inflated your value. But then it's like, does the sales match? When are you going to make that money back?
Yeah.
All that money that you're spending. Does it ever become sustainable?
Yeah.
And from what I see, no. Like, I just want to make a sound, sustainable business. You know, and that's already like revolutionary.
Yeah.
In where we're at, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's already kind of like radical. Like, what? You want to sustain your business with sales? Because it's like, my mom had a sari-sari store when we were small in the Philippines. It's like, that's how it was, right? Like, we needed to sell enough to buy more things to sell more and then make a little profit on top, right? That's how it works. But that's not how it works over here in capitalism times.
Yeah.
My company is doing great.
Yeah.
And no one has done the kind of work that I've done in terms of the kind of business I'm running.
Yeah.
No one's going to feature me because I'm not making $200 million a year.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not valid in the capitalist kind of system, right? But the business is sustainable. The people that I employ are sustaining their lives. Commerce exists in people since ancient times, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And the anti-capitalists kind of forget that capitalism is just commerce, but without the ethics and without the morality. It's part of who we are. Like, kind of getting sucked into the history of like how we were supposed to act.
So what you're talking about is self-validation based off of your standards of what you feel should be the way that you judge or determine.
That's right.
Where that validation comes.
I mean, that's what it's all about. Like all the memes on Instagram. It's like, love yourself first. This is what it is. This is how it plays out.
Yeah.
As a community.
And that's what you feel that Vinta Gallery is doing, is not only for yourself in terms of fulfilling a sense of purpose and validating that sense of purpose through your creations, but also allowing others to physically wear and say, this is who I am, this is where I come from. Or even if it's not where I come from, this is what I want to represent today, and this is how I want to feel today in this particular piece of clothing that comes from so many places in history and heritage and life experience.
Yeah, I put all of that meaning into all the things that I do. I had a choice to get into the fashion industry in the 90s when I graduated, and I didn't like it because I was already rebellious and kind of like, I want what I want and I want it this way, and I don't want to be oppressed as much as possible. I don't want to put myself in that position. And the fashion industry is cutthroat. I did it. I went to New York. I did internships over there. It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is not why I love clothes. This is not why I love fashion. So I abandoned it for a really long time. Instead, I went into the community.
Wow, that's fascinating, because then now you've brought together your passion and your love for the community, and you've created this vehicle in which the two can then uplift both.
Yeah. And then I can be the artist that I've always wanted to be. And then I'm running the company the way I want to run it.
You're so about being true to yourself. And do you ever find that you have moments where you're like, dang it, I sold out for just a quick second? Or are you just like, no, this is it?
No, I'm very sure of what I'm doing.
That's awesome. Wow.
I know, right? It's like, I worked too hard to get here to doubt where I'm at right now.
How would you encourage people to be more, I don't know, courageous in their just being okay with who they are and where they come from? Because I feel like there's so much displacement that happens, especially as a Filipino. It's like, oh yeah, I'm Filipino, but then I need to feed into this machine and I need to be part of this bigger picture. It's like, how can you continue to stay true to yourself when there's so much coming at you that tells you you should be something else?
It's hard.
It doesn't look hard though, for,
no,
you know, because
but it came naturally to me to question everything. And that came from my history of abuse, right? Like leaving home, being totally isolated. You know, my dad told my whole family that I was a bad person and that no one should talk to me. So I was fully exiled.
In your own family.
That makes you feel bad when you're young, at any age, really.
Yeah.
Then you just look inward. That was the thing that pushed me to look inward. It's like, why am I doing this? Why is this that I'm creating this situation for myself?
Yeah.
And it's like, why do I need to stand here and stand for that?
Yeah.
Right? Like be alone because I stand for what I believe in. I mean, a lot of Filipinos, it's almost like weird to me. It's like, oh, your family loves you. It's like, oh, your dad loves you. That's nice. Then it's like, oh yeah, then it's going to be difficult to question things.
Yeah.
When you are loved and nurtured, right? It's harder to question the things that aren't right in that situation because the right things kind of cover it up.
Right.
Right? With me, there was no cover up.
Yeah.
It was all wrong and kind of hurtful and damaging.
Yeah.
So it was like I was in self-protection mode, right?
Yeah.
But when, you know, you have a happy family and, you know, everybody loves you and people are supporting you, how do you question that? Right? So then it's like you have to zoom out and look at outside of your family, the community.
Yeah.
Like outside of the community, like the country that you live in, the politics. All of that is intrinsically connected. So it's hard.
Yeah.
I think it's a hard start, especially when your family's done okay.
Yeah.
You're middle class.
Yeah.
You were provided for, and, you know, seems like you were provided for more than if you had lived in the Philippines, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're privileged in that way. And then it's like, how do you start breaking that down? I think you need to start looking at your history.
Yeah.
That's our whole thing. That's my whole thing with Vinta too. It's like people need to start looking at their history. Looking at the history of the country, because you are not removed from that. You are in America because of our history. There is something bigger than you and your family that brought you to this land, this stolen land, right?
Right.
And people forget that.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's not just about your dad and mom who brought you here.
Yeah.
There was a reason why they left our homeland. That's displacement.
Yeah.
Why did they think they had to leave? To provide better for your future? It's like, why isn't it better over there? Why? Start there. You know, why are we all here trying to tread water, finding each other and trying to find ourselves here?
Yeah.
Right? We're clearly not seen by the government in a lot of ways. You know, we're still fighting for that. There's a reason for the journey. And what is that?
Yeah.
And you have to start there. You have to look back before you can look ahead. It's almost like Jose Rizal said that, and everybody knows that quote. You don't know that quote?
No. I actually don't. But I'm shaking my head because it's like, no, it's so true. Like, even though he said it, it's because it's so true. There's a reason why cliches exist. It's because they actually are really entrenched in truth.
I feel like young people cannot find their confidence and their self-awareness if they don't know who they are.
Yeah.
And it's not just about like, oh, my name is Caroline and I'm whatever. It's like, where am I from? Like, people don't think that, oh, you're just Caroline, you're Canadian. It's like, no, they go, where are you from? Where are you from? Where are you from? All the time. It's like, if you don't know what that is, you don't have to answer that person asking you where you're from, but you need to know it for yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Where am I from? And then it's like, why didn't our parents tell us anything? Why? It's really just asking all the questions. It's like the why. Why are you here? Where are you from? Why are you here? Who brought you here? Why didn't they tell you anything? Why don't you know anything about what happened in the Philippines? Why don't we know anything about World War II?
Yeah.
Why don't we know anything about the Japanese fucking taking over? And the Americans bombing Manila? Like, why don't we know that? None of us knew about the Philippine-American War. Yeah. And here we are in America. And like Filipinos being like, we should have been the 50th state, not Hawaii. And it's like,
oh my God.
You know that's a thing, right?
No.
Oh my gosh.
That's a thing.
I'm opening up a can of worms. Filipinos say that.
Oh, wow.
In the Philippines.
Wow.
It has been said. Not everybody thinks that.
Right.
You know.
Right.
But that's a thing like that people have said. And then it's like, why are Filipinos doing Hawaiian dance? Why? You know?
Yeah.
It's like, why was I pretending to be Mexican when I lived in Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So many questions. And the answers are there.
Yeah.
If you look for them. Right?
Right. Thank you. I knew this would be good. My mind has been blown like all over Toronto in like the best way possible.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you. Really.
You're welcome. See, look, now I can chill like this. And be like, hey, you can see my panty. What's up?
And my bulldhead.
What's up? What's up, tita?